Hey, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. It's Dave with you. Welcome to 2025. It's exciting to be here with you. We're going to do a 4-part mini-series all around unmasking the imposter. So if you have been struggling with who would ever care about my show, or what I have to say, if you're the type of person thinking, man, I don't know about this, we're going to unmask the imposter starting right now. Great to be back with you. It's exciting to be here on the podcast. And 2025 is going to be a great year for you because you're going to continue with your podcast. You're going to start a new podcast. You're going to do all the things. And I'm excited for you already. And if you're looking for help in your journey as a podcaster, please reach out. I would love to be a part of your story, your success, your journey, and be your cheerleader to support you and to be there in your corner, giving you the tools and helping you with all the questions you have about podcasting. There's a lot of podcast gurus out there who are trying to sell you something. What I'm trying to do is offer you the support to do the thing you want to do and share your message. And for the most part, everything that I do here on the podcast is free. So this is my gift to you. And I just want to see as many people as possible jump behind the mic, jump in front of a video camera, share their story with the world and help one person. That's my goal for you this year. And you're like, wow, that's a pretty low target. Well, no, think about it. If you could reach one person and their life is different because you showed up, doesn't that mean something to you? Doesn't that mean that your whole existence, the reason why you're on this planet, is come to a completion? Like you've actually done something great with your story. And you could do that through podcasting. So I'm excited for you. But the one thing when I talk to new podcasters, many of the times when I speak to them, they're really struggling with the whole idea of, I just don't feel confident to put myself out there yet. I'm going to do a little bit more research. I'm going to take a couple more courses. I'm going to listen to a few more podcasts, read a few more books, hire a few more gurus. I'm going to pay them a lot of money. They're going to tell me the same thing, and I still get stuck in this loop of learning, but never doing. So I'm going to get you beyond the learning part and the fear of getting your voice out there to the doing part. And in these 4 episodes around unmasking the imposter, I want to break down in 4 episodes for you, a little mini-series on how you can rise above the voices in your way telling you that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, none of those things. I want to get you past that. And we're going to do that together here on the How to Podcast series. Are you ready? Okay, well, here we go. So, Dave, I got this great idea for a podcast. It's going to be about this. I'm going to tell my story about that. I want to reach these people with my story. I just have this burning desire to get out there and share this message with the world. I might be an author, a business coach, a guru in my space. I might be the go-to person who speaks on stages, who shares great insights with people. I have maybe been a guest so often. I can't count the number of times I've been a guest on a show. And as I do these podcast guesting opportunities, I'm thinking, man, what if I had my own show? Like, what if I could be the creator of something on my own and not have to rely on someone else? What if I just became my own podcast? But even though I kind of speak on stages and I get in front of people, I'm still secretly, if truth be told, secretly battling with this whole thing about, well, what if somebody finds out that I don't know everything about my topic? What if somebody in the comments calls me out for my incorrect thoughts, my wrong facts, my tangents, my mistake? What if somebody finds out that I only know so much about my topic? So to battle that, I'm going to go deep on my topic and become an expert, hide myself away from the world, and study for years before I ever stand up in front of people and share my message, before I ever start a podcast. Because once I set this out into the world, it's open to anybody to scrutinize, to come at me for maybe my lack of knowledge or my lack of experience, or someone who's done this longer, maybe done it better, who would probably step all over us. That's what's happening, I'm finding, in podcasting. We have people who have been in podcasting from the very beginning. And they look at people coming to podcasting today, and they're pretty grumpy. They're kind of these old curmudgeon type people who, because podcasting is getting easier to start, more people are coming, and there's kind of a disconnect between the love of podcasting and how hard it was in the early days, and it really was hard to do a podcast, to today where it's relatively easy to get your voice onto a podcast and get it out into the world. So it's our benefit that it's easier for more people to do it. But in that, I'm finding there's some judgment coming from some of the, quote, gurus in the space on how easy it is, and that they don't like the quality of what's being put out there because it's so easy. And because you don't need all these expensive tools to be a podcaster, they feel that the bar has come down so low that anybody can have a show. And they're thinking, well, we kind of like the bar to be a little higher so that not so many people are doing this and flooding the market of podcasting with average podcasts. Average in content, average in quality, average in length of episodes and how long somebody records. And they put up this bar saying that you have to meet this minimum criteria, which is also called gatekeeping, by the way. They put up this thing, this roadblock that says you have to do it this way, otherwise you shouldn't be a podcaster. And those gurus are what I like to call wrong, because it doesn't matter really how you start and what tools you use. One thing you're going to notice about the How to Podcast series, we don't spend a lot of time talking about technology and microphones and headphones and computers and laptops and Apple and Mac and Windows. And why? Because that's not what the show's about. The show is about you, not your tech. Nobody is ever going to email you and say, oh my gosh, I just found your show about dad's mental health. I got to say, I'm really, really curious what kind of microphone you're using. Nobody's going to email you that. They're going to be more interested in your content and you than the tech that you're using to get there. So, not that it's not important. It is important to have good tech and to know how to use it. But this show's not about tech. This show's about you and your message and getting it out to the world. But the biggest thing I'm finding that blocks a lot of podcasters, content creators, really gets in their way. It gets them distracted, gets them on tangents, gets them to focus on other things. Comes down to this whole imposter syndrome thing. A lot of people talk about it, but I wanted to break down in the next 4 episodes 4 key things that I think you could focus on the beginning of 2025 and beyond that could help you as a standalone mini-series all around imposter syndrome. So the first of the 4 in the series, today we're going to look at identifying imposter syndrome in podcasting. What is it? And let's kind of focus on defining it, first of all, before we move into how we can address it, how we can work through it, and how we can come on the other side of it to create the best thing possible in this world, your podcast, your voice in the world. Let's get through this imposter syndrome together, you and I, okay? We're going to work on this together. Identifying imposter syndrome in podcasting, and here we go.
Okay, we're rolling.
So let's start right at the beginning. Okay, now I know you probably heard many people talk about imposter syndrome, but I'm going to go back to the beginning so that we can all be on the same page and work through this together. I don't want to make any wild assumptions, and maybe you've heard one thing from one person and someone else has heard something from somebody else. I just want to kind of level the playing field, create a foundation that we can build this house over the next 4 episodes together. Okay, we're going to start on the same page, clean slate, imposter syndrome. What is it? It is a common experience among high achievers, content creators, authors, musicians, anybody who creates or puts something out into the world where you have no control over the results. It affects about 70% of professionals at some point in their career. And in the world of podcasting, this phenomenon is particularly prevalent, impacting both new podcasters and seasoned podcasters alike. It affects everyone. It's not just for people who are starting out. So if you think you're going to work through imposter syndrome and you're going to get to the other side and you'll be fine after 5 episodes, I'm here to tell you I've got over 1,200, 1,500 episodes And it's still there. It's still there. I do the question of the month. Every month, I put out a question to the audience, to you, and I'm inviting you to respond back and give me your thoughts on the question. Give me your answer, but also your name, the name of your show, and promote your podcast. The idea of the question of the month, other podcasters do this as well, but my focus is to put the attention on you. I want people to come and listen to your podcast. So I include links to your show, whatever. I put all that information in the show notes so people can come and support you. That's the idea, okay? So when I put these out, though, I put these questions out, there's times, even after many months of doing this, where I will only get one, maybe two people responding to the question of the month. It might be that the question doesn't relate to everybody. I get that. It might be that people forget, oh yeah, I forgot to respond. I keep forgetting. Oh no. It could be that people are nervous about responding in audio format. So there's a lot of reasons why people may or may not respond to the question of the month. But even for me, after all these episodes, when I record something like that where I'm inviting feedback and I'm going to create an episode highlighting the feedback that I'm anticipating is going to come to me, there's times where I'm like, I don't even know if anyone is going to respond to this question. And I get really close to the end of the month, like the 20th, the 25th, the 28th, and I'm like, oh no, nobody's responding. I do like a little reminder short episode to put it out there as a Daily Dave going, hey everybody, just a reminder, question of the month is wrapping up. I'd love to get your responses. I would love to see more people respond quite openly, because the whole idea again is I just want more people to hear about you. And the best way to promote your podcast is word of mouth. So I would love to get a better response month to month. And it's getting there. It's going to take time. But there's, even for me, I feel like an imposter, because I'm saying that engagement's so important for podcasting, and then I don't get engagement. And for me, it's really kind of a humbling experience to talk about engagement and then put a request out for engagement and get very little, sometimes not at all. And that's the weirdest feeling ever. I can remember back in Clubhouse days, I would set up a Clubhouse room. It's all about podcasting. It's all safe place to get together and talk in a social audio platform to talk about podcasting. And I would sit there in the room by myself, and all the other podcasting rooms were doing great. Hundreds of people showing up, having great conversations. I would do one, nothing. Crickets, like zero. Nobody would show up. And I would do them on a regular basis. I put them out there. I would be in the other ones, talking with them and supporting other people in their rooms on Clubhouse. Nobody came to mind. And I'm like, what's going on here? I set up a meetup on meetup.com. And there were weeks where nobody signed up for my meetup. And in those moments, you're like, why am I even doing this? Or does anybody care? Right? Like, I'm trying to build community here. Nobody's responding. And in that moment, this fear comes over you like, well, what if you're putting out there isn't resonating with people? What if people don't care? And in that moment, imposter syndrome comes and taps me on the shoulder and makes me kind of feel like I'm not good enough, or my content's not good enough, my requests, my questions, my meetups, my Clubhouse rooms, whatever, they're not good enough. So nobody cares, Dave, about what you're doing. And talk about a real sobering moment to stand there and look into your analytics, look at your lack of emails, lack of responses, and go, what am I doing wrong? Why do people not care? And you feel this sense that you're not doing everything that you should, and you're not reaching the audience you're hoping to. And that's a part of imposter syndrome. It's a common experience for all of us. So I heard the story about a gentleman named Jeff. He's a successful podcaster with over 250 episodes under his belt. But despite receiving accolades from fellow podcasters, when he would go to conferences, Jeff would often downplay his achievements, attributing his success to luck or good timing, even as he interviewed high-profile guests, he himself found himself questioning how he got here. Like how is this happening? He was feeling like a fraud despite clear evidence of his accomplishments. And that's the one thing, too, is I think there's a fear of success. There's a fear of failure. Like, what if I start this podcast and nobody listens to it? Then what? But there's also the fear of success, where now you are seen as an expert because of your show, invited to speak on stages in front of people and share your story, and you're like, but I don't even feel like I have the answers for myself, let alone the answers to share with others. I've been invited to speak on podcasts and to do summits and interact with people in a, like, Dave's here to tell us his story type thing. I was invited to contribute to Story Blocks, and they did a blog post about my show. And the whole time I'm like, who am I? There are so many other people who are better at podcasting than I am. Why would they ask me? But they found something in me that they wanted to highlight. So something's working. But I was afraid of the success of my show and felt like an imposter, that who am I to put my words out there into the world through this great opportunity? I almost feel like I should redirect the request to submit to Story Blocks. I should send them over to that person, because that person's been doing it longer. That person has more success. That person has a book. I don't have a book. That person has a bigger audience. I don't have a big audience. You see what's happening in my mind? I'm like, why me? And I think imposter syndrome comes back to the question of, why me? Why now? Like, that whole world just starts to implode on you because you're struggling with the whole idea of, why me? Why now? And I think as podcasters, we need to recognize that some of us are afraid of failure. Some of us are afraid of success. And many of us are afraid of both. So what are 3 common signs and symptoms specific to podcasters around imposter syndrome? 3, okay? The first one, self-doubt and perfectionism. Podcasters experiencing imposter syndrome often exhibit perfectionist tendencies, spending excessive time editing their shows and obsessing over all the minor details, every single breath, perfection, every word, there's no stumbles, none of that stuff. They want to take everything out and show this shiny perfection of a podcast. They may feel that their work is really never good enough, regardless of the positive feedback they get from listeners and the amount of people listening to your show. They just never feel like they've gotten to a place where they are successful as a podcaster. This could come after 5 episodes, 10 episodes, 300 episodes, living the next chapter, 500 episodes. Do I think the show's perfect? No. Could it be better? Yes. Every episode, I want it to be a little bit better than the last one. And there's this side of incremental growth and throwing away everything and doing it over and over and over because you just feel like it's not perfect. And that self-doubt comes into our minds that if I can't make this sound perfect, then I'm going to be judged and nobody's going to listen. And I'm not going to be able to reach people with the message I have. So I might as well just stop, or I might as well go practice more, or I might as well take another course, or be certified to be a podcaster, whatever that is. And they deal in this world of self-doubt, self-criticism, which turns yourself inward, and you never release your podcast. So many great people have an idea, they record some episodes, but they never move to pressing it and putting it out there to the world because they themselves don't feel like it is the best example of who they are. And this cycle of self-doubt and perfectionism stops more podcasters from starting or continuing than I think anything else will. If that's you, then we need to chat and we need to unpack some of these self-doubts and perfectionism and get some outside perspective outside of the bubble that you're surrounded in on how the podcast sounds. How is the content? How is the episode? And if you're looking for that kind of feedback in a safe, gentle way, instead of being made fun of by some of the other gurus in podcasting who actually have podcasts who make fun of people who are trying to learn podcasting. If you want to work with somebody who doesn't want to make fun of you but wants to help you, then reach out to me. I'd love to help you. howtopodcast.ca. So we have some of these common signs. We have self-doubt and perfectionism. We also have comparison and self-criticism. So I've been playing guitar for 45 years. And in 45 years, I've been in studio, on stage, on television, on radio. I've done a bunch of different amazing, fun things with a guitar. And it's great. I love playing music. And we've talked about this many times in the past, but when you get up on stage in front of people, you're kind of saying, hey, look at me, right? There's one guitar player, one drummer, one bass player, and a singer. There's not a lot of place to hide. You have to do it all, and you have to do it good, because you get instant feedback from an audience as they either stand up and walk out in disgust how terrible you are, or they stand up and applaud when you do something they like. You get instant feedback as a musician on stage. And it's very hard when you then go on after somebody who was better than you, like a band that opens for you and their guitar player is like way better than you are, and you're sitting in the crowd going, oh, I don't even want to go on stage after that person because they're so good. Like, I don't even know how they played that. That sounded better. They have a nicer guitar. They play better than I do. And in that world, you start shutting down. You're like, I can't go up and after them. I can't play after that band because they were great. And I don't feel like I'm even worthy to get up there now. My guitar is crappy. My playing is not as good as theirs. And you start deconstructing and self-destructing right there in the moment in front. And you haven't even had a chance to get up there yet. But one thing I know about guitar players, whether you've been playing for a year or 45 years, everyone has their unique personality, their style. You are a mix of every song you've ever listened to, every basement practice session, every scale, every chord you've ever learned, every influence over your playing. You are the sum total of your life experience as a musician, and your life experience is different than mine. So I have bands that I sound like that you don't, which makes me different than you. I have different equipment than you have. I have been playing longer or shorter than you have. And all of these things get blended together, which makes us uniquely us. Same for podcasting. We get caught in this comparison trap and self-criticism loop where we're always kind of looking at others and going, oh my gosh, they're better than me, so I either should give up or whatever because I can't be like them. And then I get so critical of myself, saying, like, well, who would ever want to hear me compared to them? Everybody loves them. They have hundreds of thousands of downloads, and I have 20. So what's the point? Like, just go listen to them because they're better than I am. But that person can't reach the people you can. And that person is not the mix of all the things that you are. So you are uniquely created to have these experiences that can help people in a way that no one else can. That other person with all their success can't reach the people that you can. So if you don't do it, it's not going to happen, just so you know. Even though that other person's so great, that other person might be rude, might use really bad examples that talk people down, or they might use hurtful words or sayings or be biased one way over another way. There's a lot of things about other people that turn people off, and they're looking for an alternative to that person, and you might be the one, even though you talk about the same thing. So don't be afraid of someone else's success, and don't let that stop you. This whole comparison and criticism thing is a trap where podcasters compare themselves unfavorably to their guests to other podcasters. And this can really lead to some really harsh self-criticism and a belief that you're just not as qualified to host your own podcast. So you might as well give up. We need to stop comparing ourselves to others and compare ourselves to ourselves. It's kind of like golf. I'm not a golfer. I've done it twice, I think. I love mini putt. But you compare yourself to the last time you did it. Did you improve? Have you put in the work to get better? And you should see some improvement game to game, hole to hole. You should see some kind of improvement if you put in the work. So you're comparing yourself to yourself. And that's what we need in podcasting. Healthy comparison for our own show, episode to episode, getting better and better and better. That's what we need to work on. The last thing around some common signs and symptoms of imposter syndrome specific to podcasters is this whole thing of the fear of being discovered. Now, I'm not talking primarily about your show being discovered and people like, oh my gosh, what a great podcast. But more about the fear of being discovered as a fraud or as someone who doesn't have all the answers. I see it with the authors I talk to. I see it with musicians. I see it with anybody who creates content, anybody that's out there creating something in the world. There's this fear that what if somebody knows or finds out that I'm not as talented as someone else? And it's a persistent worry among imposter syndrome people that they're going to be found out. And for podcasters, this might manifest as anxiety about listeners realizing that they're not as knowledgeable or skilled as they appeared to be. I'll give you an example. We had our meetups, and I did a live recording of Dad Space in front of people on our meetup using my audio setup, and I shared my screen. They could see what I'm doing. And I recorded an episode 160 of Dad Space, was recorded in front of technically a live audience. And I wasn't doing to show off. I was just showing the tools that I use and how I approach recording a solo episode. Just short. And I wanted people to see me do it in real time. So I recorded it and I showed them how I did it and released it. I didn't edit it. I didn't fix it. You're going to hear stumbles. You're going to hear my nervousness. I've never done this before. So talk about imposter syndrome. Like I didn't even get a chance to practice. I just went on and recorded as if I was by myself, recording alone. And but I did it in front of people. Like I was like, my stomach was in knots. But I wanted people to see that it's not as hard to do because a lot of people get wrapped up in how difficult it is to record. But I wanted them to see it as it's not that bad. So that was my example for them on recording Dad Space in front of a live audience. But yeah, that was interesting. There's this fear that we're going to be discovered, and not for the good reasons, but for the bad reasons. I just want you to know that all of us have this one thing in common. All of us don't know what we don't know. And I think if you can show people that you're on a path of learning and that you're growing, you're investing the time, you're getting better at your craft, you're pulling in resources, you're learning from others, you're open to learn, and you don't come off as having all the answers when you know you don't, you're not going to be as worried about being discovered for being a fraud. People are going to call you out in comments. People are quite rude. It's nasty sometimes. But as long as you don't pretend that you are the answer to every question, and you're like, well, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to go find out. And I'm going to come back and do an episode about this because I'm curious as well. So great question. I'll go figure it out. I'll be back. That's much better than just making up something on the spot or using the same examples over and over and over again, which are tired and really quite boring by now. You are in a process of growing. So where I see people struggling the most in podcasting is when they stop growing, when they stop investing in themselves, when they stop learning, and they rest, they coast. That's a dangerous spot to be in. So what are some self-assessment techniques that you could use as a podcaster to help you on your journey of identifying imposter syndrome for yourself. One of the tools I came across is the Harvey Imposter Scale. HIPS, HIPS for short. And listeners can use this HIPS scale. It's a 14-item questionnaire to assess the level of imposter syndrome feelings that you're having in the moment. So I have a link for this in the show notes for you to go check it out. Again, it's the Harvey Imposter Scale. Questions include statements like, people tend to believe I am more competent than I really am. That's one of the questions. Or, I tend to feel like a phony. Like, if that's you, then you should probably go through this scale and just see where you're at. It's kind of a measuring stick. And just play with it. Okay? Again, you're not tied to the results, but it's just another way to kind of say, well, where am I at as somebody on the scale of imposter syndrome? Another thing to do is more of a reflection exercise. I want you to reflect on your achievements and any positive feedback you've had about you, yourself, or your podcast in more specific terms. Any kind of feedback that you've had that you can bring to mind. For me, I always keep an email folder of any good feedback, emails, comments, and I put them there. It's my happy folder. And if I'm having one of those days, I go to my happy folder and just read some of the past comments that have come in from listeners and people that I've worked with, people I've been coaching, people I've been editing for. Those comments can really refill your tank. So keep a happy folder in 2025 and just anytime somebody sends you some nice words about you or your show, put it in there. Put a copy in there. Just keep it. It's going to help you. But reflect on any positive feedback you have had in the past for your show. And again, I would keep any screenshots. I would keep all compliments, your reviews that are positive. Negative reviews, don't worry about those. But any kind of reviews that are positive, anything tangible that you can keep in a handy place, easy to access for those moments where you're struggling and you're feeling a little overwhelmed and underqualified. Go to your happy folder, pull up these comments, and refill your tank. Reflect on great feedback. When you feel like you are slipping into that imposter syndrome feeling again. One other thing to look at as we kind of wrap up this part of the first episode of our 4-part mini-series is to be mindful around negative self-talk. Now, I don't know if you're a positive person or you tend to be a little more negative, especially to your own self, the things you say when no one's around. If you're hard on yourself, if you feel like you beat yourself up because you're not as good as someone else, and you have this loop playing in your mind that everything you do is not good enough, that's something you really need to address. And that comes through conversation, community, that comes from outside feedback, from somebody that comes from a trusted source, somebody you look up to, somebody who's been doing something that you admire. That all comes from building community. And I'm finding in podcasting that many of us podcast alone. We podcast in our basements or in our bedroom and just us and a microphone and the hope that someone's going to press play on this. But we really would benefit from being in community with other podcasters so that we can listen to other people as they struggle through their imposter syndrome. We can pick up on things that work for other people and maybe try them for ourselves. And we can be vulnerable with other people and say, I'm struggling right now. And I don't know if I should continue. I don't see value in my efforts. And have somebody who has been on the same path get into our world and give us true love and admiration for sharing our message with the world, because they know how it feels in their world to face some of these same questions that we question ourselves with. So if you're one of those negative self-talkers, I really want you to, again, embrace that happy folder we talked about, so that when you have those moments where you get down on yourself and you start talking down to yourself, and making yourself smaller, that you go back and read what people really think of you. And it will then, again, refill your cup and help you to move forward with your show, with whatever you're working on, so that you can reach more people. As podcasters, we have this beautiful thing where we can jump on a microphone, share our thoughts with the world. There's nobody standing in our way. We don't have to report to anybody. We don't need permission to do this. Our voice can go out into the world and have an impact because there's someone else there in the world who is struggling with something similar to what you're struggling with right now. There's someone else there who is battling mental health, and you're battling mental health. Your words, your journey can help somebody and inspire somebody. You have an answer to someone's question. Just like there's a lid for every pot, there is a listener for every podcast. And my encouragement to you in 2025 is to look beyond your limitations, whether self-imposed, whether they're bigger, you make them bigger than they really are, whether there's something that you feel is crippling to you, that to the point where you just can't move forward because you are just so burdened by whatever it is for you that's bringing you down. There is somebody eagerly looking for you in this world. And even if it's only one person, is that not enough for you to get out, share your message, and help one person in 2025? I think this is a great opportunity to be a podcaster. And if you've been in this loop of preparation, education, practice, and never moving forward to actually doing the thing, this is your year. You're going to start your podcast. It's going to go out there to the world. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be error-free. It can always be better. But you can't get to episode 10 without episode 1. So let's get you to episode 1. Let's get you to the point where you can get your voice out there, learn, grow, get feedback, and then see those messages come back to you. Oh my gosh, what a great story. What a great episode. Thank you for recording this. I love your show. Those are going to be comments that are going to come back to you in 2025 because you were obedient enough to give it a try. Do your best with what you have, where you are at this moment. You have everything you need. You don't need another course. You don't need another book. You don't need another guru. You don't need to pay $2,000 to be certified to be a podcaster. All of these things are not required. What's required is for you to hit record and post your message to the world. With all of the things that you're battling with, getting started is the one thing that we can do together. I can't record your podcast for you. I can't share your story for you, but I can help you get your message out there. So if you need help, howtopodcast.ca. In the show notes is a link to my calendar just for listeners of the show. And nobody else has this link. It's not on my website. It's just for you. It's free. I don't charge you anything. And you can use it as often as you want. Go ahead, try me. And let's get together and talk about your show. And if you're battling with imposter syndrome, I'd love to talk about this episode or the next 3 episodes. And I'd love to be a part of your story so that we can work on this together. Podcaster and podcaster together. You're not alone in 2025. And from one person who deals with imposter syndrome all the time, I wanted to let you know that there is a side of this where things are going to get easier. You're going to find resources and people who will love and support you in community, but you need to put yourself out there and stop giving yourself the excuse that you're not good enough. You are good enough. You are, and you have everything you need to start. So let's go. You and me together, we're going to make this happen. It's enough talking about it. It's enough planning. It's time to do the thing. And I'm here for you. howtopodcast.ca. So in our next episode here around Unmasking the Imposter, we're going to be looking at the ideas around measuring the doubt that you have as a podcaster and quantifying imposter syndrome's impact on your podcast. How much is this really impacting you, your show? We're going to talk about that on the next episode here around our imposter syndrome series, our mini series, 4 episodes to help you crack the code and move forward with your podcast. Thanks for listening. Come back for the next episode. Excited to share that with you. Take care. So I get asked quite often, usually at the end of a podcast, like right now, Dave, how can we help you? Like, how can we, as a listener, like, support the show? Can we come rake your leaves? Can we cut the grass? Shovel the snow? Watch your dog? Help you move? What can we do? Clean your dishes? Oh, that'd be interesting. Well, if you can't do that because, you're in Poland, maybe you can help us by supporting us with our Buy Me a Coffee. It's right there on our website. And, it just will help us to, A, stay fueled because, we drink a lot of coffee around here. And it helps the show. So if you want to help us, it's out of the goodness of your heart. I can tell you that listening to the podcast to this point, you've already helped us so much. But I do have people saying, Dave, I'd love to give back something small, even just to the show. Buy Me a Coffee link is on our website at howtopodcast.ca. And you can support the show that way. It would mean a lot to have you on our team supporting what we do here. If you find value in the show, then that's great. Share the show, tell somebody about it. And when somebody says, Dave, I want to start a podcast, who should I check out? Oh, you should go check out the How to Podcast series because of all the great co-hosts and all the things that happen here, the meetups, everything. And I would appreciate that. And then fill our cup once in a while if you can. But again, thank you so much for being here and supporting the How to Podcast series. Take care. Talk soon.